Today, and Foust, I think, does have the edge. He's very familiar with this type of driving, and he's good at it.
As he goes through the 180 box into the final 720 barrel, it is for Tanner Foust. He starts his second revolution, and Tanner Foust is going to take the gold medal. Gymkhana grid goes to Tanner Foust here at X Games Los Angeles.
Major success as a multi-style racer, stunt driver, and TV host is hard to come by for a single person. Today's guest, Tanner Foust, is one of the few that have done it. He's a professional racer, stunt driver, TV host, a pilot for fun, and a former ski town bus driver, among other things. He has won many national and global championships, gold medals, and broken multiple world records. Tanner spent many childhood years in Scotland where he discovered rallying, and the rest is history from there. He turned a hobby he loved into a fast-paced, amazing career, and we want to know how he's done it and what it's like. Welcome to the Cutting Edge Garage Podcast.
Tanner, thank you for taking the opportunity and the time to be with us today. We're really excited to have you on. There's a lot of really cool things that you've done in your career. Rallycross champion, popular TV show host. Tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody that's joining us that doesn't know who you are and what you've done.
Well, I'm a Gemini. I like soft jazz. I've been super fortunate.
Emily's taking notes.
I do like holding hands. I've been really lucky. I feel like I've lived 3 or 4 different lives, but the latest one has been about the last 20 years in motorsport. And I didn't really come into racing in the traditional way of, my family was into it, and my dad maybe had a race car in the garage, kind of a thing. My dad was a doctor, and I just was a fan of cars. I grew up looking, guessing the cars by their headlights, and just a fan of, a white Lamborghini on the wall in my bedroom, and the whole regular car enthusiast fan of car kid is how I grew up. And so it wasn't really until I was in college that I started working for an inventor who invented amusement rides, and sort of got this entrepreneurial thinking of just pick what's most fun and then try to figure out how to make a living doing it, just like you're doing. That's a mindset that isn't really instilled by your parents, So I thought driving was the most fun thing that I ever had tried at that point, and it was either skiing or driving, and so I went ahead and tried to figure out how to make a living driving. So yeah, doing it that direction, you end up getting involved in a lot of different parts of it, whether it's drifting, rallycross, off-road, formula car racing, but you also end up doing a lot of weird stunts, finding other ways to make a living, like hosting TV shows, doing commercials, things like that. So that's why the career path is kind of so scattered, is because it really started as an entrepreneurial business more than just let's go to the track and race.
It sounds like you've had a blast the entire time, though.
Not complaining. Yeah, it's been super fun. I mean, it's I grew up in a military family, and we moved every couple years, and I always sort of had the mindset of resetting every 2 or 3 years, and never thought I could stick with a career or a job, long enough to even call it a career. But with driving, with motorsport, there's so many facets of it, not just the different types of motorsports, but even, you have weird conversations like the Hot Wheels stunts, for example, that just came out of nowhere. And suddenly you're thinking about how to, break world records with loops or jumps or whatever. And it's completely separate from how to go fast around a racetrack. And then drifting comes into the game, and then some movies or whatever for stunt driving. And so it's so diverse that you can never get bored. So I really love the variety of motorsport for sure.
That's awesome. So I understand that early on you were living in Ireland with your family. Is that correct?
Or Scotland, yeah.
Scotland. Okay. Sorry about that. And saw Rallycross and were kind of hooked at that point in time. But you also did something driving school buses or something, and there may have been may not have been the right career choice for you. Tell us about that.
I'll tell you, the story that's very close to the story. Your version's way worse, though. School bus. School bus would be bad. It was a ski town city bus,
Okay.
So there weren't any children harmed in the making of this story. But let's stick with school bus. Let's just imagine a big, long, yellow school bus. No, it was. I grew up in Scotland. One of the places we were based was in Scotland.
Okay.
And my stepfather was a cryptologist who basically is like a decoder, and they listened to submarines somehow in Scotland. And then, and I fell in love with rally racing, which is actually kind of stage rally through the forest. And Colin McRae was a hero who I later got to actually drive with, and he drove my drift car, and I was teammates with him on a team at X Games. Super cool close of that circle. But in college, my first year, I really didn't focus too much on school, and I skied a lot, and I ended up having to take a year off, and I actually took 2 years off. And one of those hiatuses from one of those years, I lived in Vail, and I got a job driving the buses. And I drove from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. They were giant buses. I don't know how long, 50-foot buses, the kind where you have like the big steering wheel and the front tires are behind you, and, there were pusher buses. And I worked the graveyard shift, which was awesome. I could ski every day. And then, and the bars all closed at 2:00. So just pick up hitchhikers at 2:30 or so, and then you're just done for 2 hours doing nothing. So we'd go into the Beaver Creek West lot, and this is the only job I've been fired from. It's not a great story. But we'd go to the Beaver Creek West lot. There were 4 of us working that shift, and we would just climb into a bus and just start doing donuts. And, it's just a big dirt lot covered in snow. And it's the weirdest thing because you got this, this giant dish steering wheel, and the front tires are behind you, so it kind of pulls you around backwards when it does donuts. And everybody in the back's like, yeah, hanging on for life in the back seat, having a great time. And then our boss was in the parking lot one night, so we did get fired. But
he didn't find the humor in that at all.
I was hoping he was taking video or something, but no, he didn't. And it was worth it, though.
You should have put him on the bus with you, and he would have had a greater appreciation for what was going on.
Should have thought of that. No, you got to come try this out. Yeah, no, I don't know. The city was pretty strict. That was the town of Avon, which is right next to Vail. Mm-hmm. And so if you've ever, for any of your viewers that have been skiing out in Vail or whatever, you probably rode one of those big red and white buses, but they're good. And
they do have the ability to drift.
They do drift well. Yeah. Which is in Top Gear. We did have like 7 minutes to fill in one of the shows, and one of the producers was like, oh, hey, how about that bus drifting story? Why don't we do like a Will It Drift type segment? Because we were at El Toro, which is out here in Southern California, big Air Force base or Marine base that's closed down. And so we just got a bunch of things and then tried to drift them, a limo and a food truck and a bus. It's a little different on a concrete runway than a snowy parking lot, but that it turned out to be one of the more popular 7 minutes of the show, but it came from that getting fired story in Beaver Creek.
That's awesome. So you were the 2011 X Games gold medalist, 2011 global Rallycross champion, and 2019 American Rallycross champion. Looking back on some of your racing accolades, because there's a bunch there, those were some that stood out to us. What stands out the most to you?
I mean, just getting paid to drive was probably one of my biggest accomplishments. That, there was a transition when I went from rally racing, which was, stage rally in the forest. One of the most exciting forms of racing there is. It's just really not popular in the U.S. When I transitioned to that, and I was doing that and drifting at the same time, I started getting paid to have a steering wheel, which was a dream. So that that was a euphoric, moment there, that those few years when I realized maybe I could actually make a living doing this. But the first X Games, which I think was in 2007, I think the first X Games gold, I got 4 of them and 10 X Games medals. And that run of years that Rallycross was part of X Games was super cool. They'd build this like drop down into the stadium where you like literally drop down, the rows of seats were covered in dirt, and then went down, ripped around the stadium side by side and did a big jump and back out of the stadium. That was super fun. So, making a living at it, and the X Games was big, and the Hot Wheels stuff was really cool. And racing in Europe, Rallycross for both Ford and for more recently for Volkswagen. And I think I'm the only American to win events over there. And for 5-6 years, I was the only American to ever compete over there. And that was kind of a proud moment. I never really thought I'd have that kind of, I don't know, pride of, representing our country over there while battling it out in all these very strange tracks all over Europe. So that was also a pretty euphoric moment as well. So it's been super fun. I mean, it's always a changing environment, and here we are now in really weird times. But you never know what's over the next horizon. Could be just a totally different flavor of motorsport. But yeah, it's always been super fun.
So tell us. You mentioned a little bit earlier about the Hot Wheels challenge. So tell us a little bit about that. My understanding is you jumped a car 332 feet. Is that
is right? That is accurate. It was it started as a dinner conversation and napkin drawing kind of a thing, and it was like, yeah, this will never happen, but sure, let's keep talking, see what happens, and move forward to engineering drawings. And then before you know it, they'd rented out the whole Marriott on the Indy 500 weekend in Indianapolis, and they were going to do the jump at the right before Gentlemen Start Your Engines on the 100th running of the Indy 500, and then it got real. And we did a bunch of testing, and with that stunt, you could start out small with a 160-foot jump, and for one of those trucks is not that big, and then get bigger, move the ramp bigger and bigger, and until you started breaking world records. In testing, we broke the world record probably 10 times, and we did about 50 jumps. And but it was a very, very cool thing to be a part of, because Hot Wheels for real. It was like,
Right.
Your toy car set, and then just like you always as a kid sort of imagined being inside that car and what it would feel like and all that, and then to like do it for real, it was kind of hilarious to do that. But it worked. Everybody survived, and so the jump was cool.
What kind of speed did it take to send a car 332 feet?
107 miles an hour. So
Okay.
it was, we had a limited space. So they decided to use one of their toys, Hot Wheels did, called the V-Drop, which, if you remember, you could have your ramp tied to your door.
Mm-hmm.
And you ratcheted your car up, and when it got to the top of the ramp, it came down the ramp from the door to build up speed for the jump. So they built a 100-foot door in the stadium. And so you're on 10 stories sitting there. There's no guardrails or anything, in a little orange track. And the first time I went off of it, I thought, okay, I'm just going to let off the brake. I'll just coast and go down this 45-degree angle. And the front went down, and then the back picked up, like lifted up, and it was on the front tires only. And it came down a little of an angle, and I got on the throttle and basically slid it down this and left these two big black marks down this orange thing. And that was the scariest moment of the whole deal. But so then I just dragged the brake over the edge, gentle in first gear, a quick, gentle in first gear, because you're falling with, you're falling with gravity. So there's not a lot of downforce on the back tires. So you couldn't give it much throttle. And then you got ready for the compression. And when you hit the compression, it was full throttle, and then into second gear, and then third gear along the way. And then we had these two speedometers there. One was GPS, one was a wheel speed sensor. And they were very accurate. They said if you went 100 miles an hour, you'd jump this far. And they were always within like 3 feet. And every mile an hour was worth 7 feet. So you had to be very exact with your speed and very exact with your throttle position when you left the ramp. 60% throttle was perfect, and the truck would kind of like lawn dart over like this and land front tires first. On the day, I was 80% because we were down 100 plus horsepower from the heat and blah, blah, blah. So I was a little bit too much on the throttle, and it went nose up. And then when it was nose up, you could hit the brakes to bring the nose back down, like in a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But that also stalls the engine, which is rotating like this. So it turns the truck to the side a bit. So you see in the video of that jump that it kind of started turning in the air, and it's in the air for almost 4 seconds. And so by the time you get to the ground, it's a pretty big angle, and the suspension, though, is amazing, and soaked it up, and it was a good day. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it was a great experience. The loop, we did a loop in LA that was a little scarier because you couldn't test it out at like with a smaller loop. You just had to basically do it. And we had 2 cars. The other stunt guy, Greg Tracy, and I just rock, paper, scissored for who went first. And I forget who won or lost, but he went first. So, yeah, and that was a cool Hot Wheels deal also.
So how did you train for the jump?
The jump, to be honest, I got a remote control car, and I started watching how it flew and the throttle in the air, what it did, what crosswinds and stuff like that did to it. And then we just started building the dirt jump of 160 feet. And then we built put the metal ramps out on a runway at El Toro and just started moving the takeoff ramp further and further back to get a bigger and bigger gap. And the whole time we had a guy from King Shocks there who's adjusting damping. We mainly messed with just the rebound in the rear, slowing the rebound down to keep the nose a bit higher, and learned a lot about the aerodynamics. The biggest fear is when the air gets underneath the truck, and if you've already hit the brakes at that point, you can't tilt it anymore with the brakes. So it just carries it over and it'll flip it all the way onto its back, which happened to the driver who broke the world record, I think 5 or 7 years after we did that Hot Wheels jump.
Wow.
But it's a big hairy jump, but it was super fun. And it's just one of the fun parts of, I don't know how I got signed up for that. I mean, maybe Hollywood type stunt driving, they see that you did this movie or that movie and they were into it, but it was a great project to be a part of for sure.
Awesome. So I have John here from my marketing team who insisted on being on here because he's one of your biggest fans. And John
Thanks,
had some
John.
questions for John had some questions for you as well. And I don't think I would have survived the day had I not allowed him to be part of this. So John, go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I just, like I said, big fan, but I just want to know, I mean, Emily and I both watch Top Gear USA, and we love it. I mean, we just want to know, what's the craziest stunts? What's your biggest stunt you've done on Top Gear?
Top Gear, it was a pretty small group traveling around. In terms of, it wasn't like a big budget stunt show like the Hot Wheels jumps, for example. So we had as many as maybe 22 people, but sometimes half that, and we would get ourselves into some pretty sketchy places. And so the stunts, I'm trying to remember actual stunts that we did that were sketchy. It was really the places we went. Like we went to Iceland and we climbed to the top of this volcano in just a flat out whiteout blizzard. And we could have done the whole show in the hotel parking lot because it was so snowy you couldn't see anyway. But, there's 15, you're packing down 15 feet of powder everywhere you go in these trucks. And Adam actually dropped his tire in after we were done shooting for that day into a crevasse, and the light lit up an entire ice parking garage underneath us. And so it's kind of amazing that we survived that. We did a lot of off-roading, a lot of camping, but it was 72 episodes, 750 days of filming, and it's a blur. Like when I go and watch those shows, and I mean, I was on the road 320 days a year at that time. So when I was up, we would just go there and they would say, "Oh, we're going to do this today." And you're like, "Really? Okay." And then you just go and do it and have some fun. And then I was racing in Europe 15 times a summer and in the US at the same time. So that whole 6 years is a blur. Sometimes I watch the shows and I'm just like, that was stupid. We definitely shouldn't have done that. But yeah, I was sort of the stunt, I guess not coordinator, but like safety person on set, because Adam would just do whatever they said. They'd be like, "Hey, it'd be really great, Adam, if you would just drive," they say it in a British accent, which I won't even try. "And if you would just, drive the car into the river just as fast as you can." And he'd be like, "Well, okay." And if somebody wasn't like, "Hey, let's just take one a little slower, maybe open the window, get ready to climb out the window or open the door or whatever, just coming up with some safety things. I mean, I think we would have cut that show short by hurting somebody, but it was, there was a lot of danger potential there.
Yeah.
Long answer with no real answer. Sorry about that.
How cool? Talking about the Top Gear episodes, how cool was it to race around Cuba?
Cuba was cool. That was cool, actually. It was a strange window to get over there, because I mean it was impossible before and impossible after. But those cars were something. We went to this one. I think it may have been in the show even, but we went to this one guy who makes gaskets.
Mm-hmm.
And because they can't buy gaskets, you bring your old gasket. He goes and he cuts a cube of rubber off of these forklift tires that he had in his yard. And then he had like a fuel pump or some sort of pump that he used as a lathe. And he would just stick this little cube of rubber on there with a razor blade and just cut you out the replica of your gasket. And that's just
talent.
It was. And it's just one of the thousands of parts of a car that were handmade, the windshield wipers from the legs of like a chair, or like they pieced those cars to keep them running. But what a trip when you drove around and you saw all 50s cars and cool trucks too. Even like the heavy duty trucks and stuff were all old 50s Dodges and stuff. That was a really, really cool trip.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, tell us about what your plans are for the future. So I saw you were talking about airplanes and things like that. Are you a pilot?
Yeah. Actually, the day we stopped filming Top Gear, I started with my pilot's license. And I'd wanted to get a pilot's license for a long time. And that was from that inventor. He was a pilot and had aerobatic planes and stuff. Yeah, so I got a small plane. I like to say it's a tractor with wings because they're so old tech. It's unbelievable. And I mean, you literally adjust the mixture as you're climbing. It's just how planes are. And I love flying. Yeah, it's become a great passion actually in recent years, which is cool. But it also helps me drive to work. A lot of the racetracks that I race at, or for off-road racing for testing, are right here in Southern California or Arizona or Utah. Reachable with a short flight. So it's been a great thing.
So is that a personal thing, or is that we're going to find a way to race planes now, or?
No, those guys are crazy. They're insane. That's like, a car racer watching MotoGP. Those guys are insane also. But I've read recently that you remember those Red Bull Air races, those are that shut down, but now they're restarting with a new series. So, I mean, I'd love to be a host or announcer for something like that. I do like flying and have learned a lot about it, and I'm learning some aerobatics. But no, the guys that are flying those, I mean, literally their guts have been dealing with those G's for so long. They live at 9-10 G's and can handle that longer than most people in the world. So it's more than just a stick and rudder skill. It's a whole physiological skill too.
Okay. So I had to ask you about the planes because that's one of the things on my bucket list. When I find some time in my schedule, I wanted to get my pilot's license and learn how to fly. Something I've always wanted to do as well.
You got to do it. We're the last generation potentially that can do this. This is one of you see everywhere you go, some freedoms being taken away as far as personal responsibility type freedoms. Automated cars, things like that. I'm all for that. In the city, I will always have a car that probably burns gas and that I can go drive through the country roads myself, even if everything is electric in the city. And I love that electric technology, and that's going to be a lot of my future in motorsport is finding the limits of that electric car technology. But with airplanes, I mean, it's amazing. Once you get your license and you're out there flying, the amount of responsibility that's put on the individual there. And, obviously no speed limits or anything like that, but the freedom, if you cut your grass and you have a big lawn, you can just land at your house. And we're one of the last countries in the world that's like that. And there's not a fee for flying through different airspace. Hardly any airports in the country, including LAX, charge you for landing, where if you go to countries in the world, there's a charge for flying through airspace. There's a charge for landing. The fuel is 5, 6, 7, 8 times as much. So if I haven't sold you on it yet, yeah,
I'm sold.
Do it
man.
now. Do it now. Your kids may not get to do it, and it's an amazing freedom. Like even if I have a meeting in Santa Monica, which without traffic is an hour and a half from here, I'll fly there because it's 12 minutes, and the airports will lend you a car for a couple hours if you buy some gas. And and even though going there, getting the plane warmed up and all that kind of stuff probably takes almost the same time, if there's even a breath of traffic, then you're winning, and you don't have to sit in the traffic. But
I'm sold. I'm definitely going to do it. So I threw 2 questions at you simultaneously. So now let's answer the second question, which is, what does Tanner's future look like? What are your plans for the future? What are you getting into?
Well, being with Volkswagen, Volkswagen is going to be, I'm pretty convinced, a leader in electric car mobility and technology. And in the U.S., we outside of this Rallycross program that we've been doing the last 6 years, and the maybe Baja racing that they did in the past, like 12 years ago, we don't see much factory sponsored Volkswagen motorsport in the U.S. Rest of the world, Volkswagen crushes stuff. WRC, which is one of the biggest racing series in the world, is rally racing. Again, not popular in the U.S. They won that championship 4 years in a row. They really crush at stuff, and their engineering for motorsport is pretty awesome. So for me, that means if they're going electric, if it's inevitable that the cars that we're going to be driving and our kids are going to be driving on the road are electric, and I want to keep some sort of motorsport alive, I'm going to be racing in electric cars. So that's what's going to be in there for me, whether it's electric Baja, electric off-roading around the world, or electric rallycross here in the U.S. I'm probably going to learn, try to learn about all of it as a student of driving. I'm going to try to sample as much electric stuff as I can to really find what I like about it and what I don't like about it, and figure out the most fun thing to do. Awesome.
So what's your recipe for success? You've obviously found a way to find success in a lot of things that you've decided to take on. What would your advice be to everyone else? This, if you use this recipe, this is what you're going to end up with.
I mean, I think a lot of what I would have to say on that is fairly cliche and said before, but as far as kind of doing the right thing when you have a fork in the road, I see a lot of people, especially in motorsport, making decisions that are very short-term gain, but not really good for your soul. And I really think that if you do the right thing, it all comes back around. But sorry, my phone ring is really
no worries.
That's the voice of Rich Rutherford. I don't know how he got on my phone, but he's a stunt guy. But I would say for driving, for me, the biggest lesson that I've taken and been a benefit of is to be a student of it all the time, as I just mentioned before. Going into it, even going into my very first race, I was, a kind of a young punk looking guy in a gentleman racing series in the SCCA. And I was starting a coaching service to pay for my races, where anybody I qualified better than, I would go, and we didn't have GoPros and stuff like that. So people couldn't evaluate themselves very easy. If somebody on the track for $120 could tell them, hey, I followed you around turn 4. If you just track out another 1.5 feet, you'll gain, half a second on that next straightaway. So I ran that service for a while and learned that if you're never cocky, never come in strong on somebody, just be a student of it and a fellow student to the other people on the track of driving and of racecraft. That's always going to be beneficial. And right up until 2019, just last year's race series, I had to go back to the drawing board on my driving technique to adapt to a new tire that we used in Rallycross. Go back to videos, go back to go-karting, studying, and I love the learning. That's what you really, a lot of people have this dream of racing cars for a living, but if you don't love the learning of it, just like your pilot's license, if you don't love what you're learning when you're flying, driving, or whatever, then you're never going to be great at it. and you're just going to do it and then get bored of it anyway. So yeah, be a student. Be a student of the driving, a student of the business, soak it up like a sponge, and you're going to be good enough at it to get paid well for it.
John, did you have additional questions you wanted to ask?
I mean, one question I guess that me and a lot of people have is, with American Rallycross closing, so since it's not going to go further on, what other kind of, I guess, Rallycross things are we going to see in the U.S. in the next couple of years? Do you know?
Well, Nitro World Games has, we did a couple of one-off sort of events with them in Utah. That's Travis Pastrana's group.
Yeah.
And I think that in the U.S., that style of motorsport where the sanctioning body is also a great distributor of content, like Nitro is the future of motorsport in the U.S. And so I think they will start a Rallycross championship. The hopes and the conversations have all been around an electric championship in the future with Nitro. So that's the hopes. There's the same conversations happen in a Rallycross series in Europe that with IMG that did the Rallycross series here in the U.S. for a couple of years. But I think the future of Rallycross in the U.S. lies with Nitro and that group coming up with crazy tracks out of Travis's brain. I mean, the last track in Utah had a gap jump over a tabletop over a bridge. So you had a 3-layer section of the track that was very video game-esque, and that's what Rallycross is about. It's about it's a kind of a freak show sport with cars that are silly fast. So yeah, I think there is a future for Rallycross. It's been well known, and I've preached it for years, as have many people, that Rallycross and hill climbs are kind of the two motorsports that were the best electric plug-in, because Rallycross events and hill climbs are both short. We run short heats, like 5 minutes or less. You use crazy acceleration, going to 60 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds. The cars look like real cars. They look like real cars that are usually the affordable car. We ran a version of a Beetle, basically. And it's a very young demographic, and yada, yada. List goes on. So I think the future of Rallycross is electric.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So who is Tanner outside of racing and flying planes? What do you do in your downtime?
Well, I have a 15-year-old daughter.
Awesome.
So, yeah, which happened, I don't know, like yesterday.
15 years ago.
I can't believe, yeah, I know it's 15 years ago. I can't believe how old she is all of a sudden. And so for, all of these last 15 years, a lot of my time off the track has been devoted to spending time with her. I have a boat and I live near the ocean. So I go out and chase dolphins around every so often. And I like taking advantage of whatever environment you live in. Before here, I lived in Steamboat, Colorado, and I love the mountains also. So in the winters, I try to get back into skiing and I also enjoy fixing stuff. God, that's horrible to say. I can't even believe I just said that. But I spend a lot of time working on the plane, working on the boat, and I kind of enjoy doing some of that myself, just learning about how some of the systems work. And it's amazing how time consuming that is, actually. I'm sure you guys know. So it's
I
cool
suffer from the same disease.
Yeah, I look at the project and I'm like, geez, I should just go camping. And by the time I got back, somebody could have finished this. And I feel amazingly lazy sometimes paying somebody to do something. I know I could just stick my head in, put my hands to work for a little while and just get it done. But then what you get out of that is the next time you hear a noise, you know exactly what it is.
Right.
And that's really, God, it makes me feel old, but that's kind of what I'm enjoying, that part of it. And it's paid off with the plane. I've gotten stuck up at Big Bear, which is, not in the middle of nowhere, but it's up at 7,000 feet, and had the starter not work. But had I not been involved in the rebuild of the starter before, I wouldn't have known exactly what to do to get us off the ground and get going again. And so it does pay off. But yeah, so it's good that you're, involved with tool company, because that's, comes in handy when that's what you're interested in doing, is fixing stuff.
One of the things that we do is tech support for MV Agusa. and most of the MV Agusta dealers in the country have motorcycle dealerships, they say, so that they can go racing on the weekends. I think that I own a tool company so that I can satiate that need that I have for tools, because I am definitely a tool junkie.
Well, you don't realize how important the right tool is until you start getting involved in fixing things yourself. It's, I mean, that's honestly the only money now that I spend on a mechanic is the ones that I have to for the airplane, because you have to be certified API to do certain jobs, or two, because they have the tool that I don't have, and they know it. They know, oh, you're going to try to go back and get that bolt done by, okay, well, just I'll be around this afternoon. Just give me a call just in case you can't get it, and they know that I'll be calling them because there's no way to get it.
We charge you more when you worked on it first.
That's right, because then you know how dirty it's going to be for us.
Right.
But yeah, no, that is it's a safety. I really didn't start getting involved in the maintenance side of it until the airplane, frankly. And with race cars, I don't touch them. I was a mechanic on a race team. My first job in racing was as a mechanic. It was actually a volunteer job in return for seat time in the race car. And it was the Spec Ford racers and Formula Mazdas in Colorado. And I was a pretty bad mechanic. They used to say to me all the time, just make sure you do it fast enough so you have time to do it over again. And that was the motto for anything I worked on. And I'm so much happier racing if I'm not working on it. And that's the great thing working with Michael Andretti's team and everything like that. Like with proper racing, you can focus just on the driving, watch your videos, learn exactly where you need to go faster, and everybody has their job. But with the airplane, when you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, if you don't know how to fix it yourself, know what tools you need to carry along to do that, then it can, not just be life-threatening. It can definitely be, inconvenient, certainly, but, there's a lot at stake. So it became a safety motivation, and now it's just become fun to work on that by myself. And, my daughter's, I've tried to get her out there working on it. She's put up with it a little bit. But hopefully that's something we can continue to do a little bit here as she's can't go to school. But but it's and if you talk to anybody who's into cars, planes, boats, doesn't matter if they're passionate about something mechanical, they'll always say, oh yeah, I worked on this old car with my dad for a summer and blah, blah, blah. And it's funny how that, sparks stuff in people that last their whole life.
It does.
Like, yeah.
One of the guys that works for me, the building that we're in now, our sales and marketing office, is an old automotive shop, and one of the guys that works for me, his dad built the building, so he has a lot of those stories. He's also that guy that takes everything apart. It doesn't matter. We get new prototype tools in before the sales team actually get to touch it, feel it, evaluate it. He already has it apart on his desk trying to figure out how it works. He doesn't always get it put back together properly, but we do at least have a basic understanding of what's inside.
That's funny. That's my
does your
brother.
daughter race?
She doesn't. She's super competitive, and the only time she liked being on a go-kart was if there was somebody else there to race against. So the whole just doing it for the sake of getting faster and just training at it was never super interesting to her.
Okay. Yeah,
but she has a lot of other hobbies, and she's amazingly driven at those. So it's all good as long as there's a focus. It's a lot less expensive if she doesn't race, to be honest. But it's no, I mean I'm supportive in whatever, but yeah, it's just about having quality time really, in whatever the activity is. But when you were saying about taking stuff apart, my brother is like that, and I remember my parents' basement was just kind of filled with stuff. If there was a phone that was going in the trash, it would just be a part, and every single wire and button taken apart. But man, that's a great way to learn about stuff, though.
It is.
You don't ever want to use it again.
I do the same thing. I think probably over the last 2 years is the first time that being a former mechanic myself, the last 2 years is probably the only time that I've ever actually paid somebody to work on one of my vehicles. Part of that is because I don't know, I have trust issues. So that, somebody else is going to do it. as well as I would, or take the time and care. So I'm the same way. I'm always taking stuff apart and trying to figure out what makes it go.
Well, saying that you have trust issues gets us halfway there. So I feel like this has been a therapeutic conversation.
It has been. It has been. I can at least admit it at this point in time. I don't know that I'm willing to go any further yet. So Tanner, how do people learn more about you, what you're up to? How do they reach out to you? You're on social media, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we're on the big three social media: Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, under just Tanner Foust. For all of them, we've started to put a bit more energy into a YouTube channel, which is T Foust Racing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's about content. You know, I'm working with a lot of partners, so a lot of what I do is just on their stuff with Rockstar Energy Drink and Volkswagen Optima batteries and Polaris. But it's all fun, and it's, you know, strange time we're living in, so we're making the best of it. You know, lots of camping and flying and doing things other than going to the racetrack and racing. But we plan on coming back in 21 pretty strong on the racetrack as the series are back in line, and hopefully have a strong program with Volkswagen.
Awesome. We're looking forward to seeing you out there, and I'm really grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Good talking to you.
You too. Thanks, Tanner. Thank you, everybody, for joining the podcast today. We'll see you again soon in the Cutting Edge Garage.